Hi again. All right, here we are at the third of our videos on meaning. So far we've talked about logic and the problem of ambiguity. Today, at last, we get to word meaning itself. The determinant in normal speech as to whether two words or phrases refer to the same thing is whether they can be substituted one for the other in any sentence without affecting the truth of the sentence. The words have to be substitutable, as we say, salva veritate. For example, the names George Orwell and Eric Arthur Blair, referring to the same person, if they do, ensures that if George Orwell was born in 1903 is true, then so too will be Eric Arthur Blair was born in 1903. In usual bottom-up approaches to semantics, where the truth of a sentence is meant to be determined by its constituent words and the state of the world, that cannot be the whole of the story about meaning. You need to be able to say more about what George Orwell and Eric Arthur Blair had in common, possibly about how they're in the same way somehow related to a certain 20th century flesh and blood novelist and essayist. Otherwise, you can't get to the truth of sentences containing the words, and from there to the evaluation of the salva veritate criterion. In the model, by contrast, semantics is top-down. We just don't need meaning to get truth, as we've seen. We accept that the explanatory obligations traditionally thought to require semantic concepts can be discharged entirely in terms of neural net pattern recognizers and the like. This frees us up to use this salva veritate criterion not just as a marker of sameness of meaning, but as the whole of the story about meaning. I spell this out in detail in the cheat sheet linked to below. Here I'll just give the high-level details. Suppose in the model that some token of the sentence Bob's dog is a mutt is true. What would it take for Fido to be a synonym, if you like, of Bob's dog? Clearly not that it be substitutable salva veritate in any token sentence at all containing Bob's dog. We want to allow that there may be many Bobs with dogs in the model, not all of whom are named Fido. A first requirement, evidently, is that it be substitutable in that exact conversational context. In general terms, our requirement for synonymy at a moment for two phrases P1 and P2 must be that any true sentence constructed at a moment with P1 should remain true if P2 is swapped in for it, and vice versa. So, in effect, if we get all the true sentences at a moment containing Bob's dog, and all the true sentences at that very same moment containing Fido, and find that they exactly line up, then Bob's dog and Fido are synonyms at that moment. And again, this can all be made more precise at the cost of a bit of tedious work with definitions. Okay, so that's a good start, but it tells us only about sameness of word meaning within sentences in some one moment. Pretty clearly, we need to be able to say something about when two token phrases from different moments of speech have the same meaning too. Here, our first priority is to find a way to correlate tokens of the very same phrase type at different moments. Utterances of Fido, say, at different moments. So yesterday across town, maybe a speaker said, Fido is friendly. Today, so at a different moment of speech, Fido barks loudly. What we're looking for is our way to a story about whether and why those two uses of Fido have the same meaning or don't. And if we can manage this, then correlating tokens of Bob's dog should fall into place. The basic idea is not complicated. As just discussed, we can easily compare the set of true sentences containing Bob's dog at a moment with a set of true sentences at the same moment containing Fido to decide the synonymy of those tokens. If now we compare the set of true sentences containing Fido at one moment with a set at another moment, we might have something like this. So at moment 1, that is today at noon, we have Fido is a mutt is true, Fido is Bob's dog is true, Fido is barking is true, and so on, and soon it's going to be quite a long list. And yesterday at noon, so we'll call that moment 2, we have also Fido is a mutt, Fido is Bob's dog, Fido is on the rug, and on and on. And lastly, though, let's say we have another moment, moment 3, say 2 days ago, when the true sentences containing Fido are Fido is a mutt, Fido is Alice's dog, Fido never barks, Fido is not on the rug, and again, presumably quite a long list of Fido containing sentences that are true. And we want to be able to say that the token phrases at moments 1 and 2 are synonymous, but not those at moments 1 and 3. The thought here. Moment 3 is meant to capture a moment when we're talking about some completely different dog who just happens to be called Fido. So the problem is that in both cases, that is between moments 1 and 2 and the case between 1 and 3, say, the problem is that in both cases we have sets which merely partially overlap, albeit to different extents. So we don't yet have a way of defending the thought that tokens of Fido at moments 1 and 2 are synonymous, but not tokens at moments 1 and 3. The start of the solution is to add tensed sentences to the sets. So say at moment 1, still say Fido is a mutt, it's Bob's dog, all those present tense sentences, but we'll add yesterday at noon, Fido was on the rug. Similarly, at moment 2, we'll add Fido will be barking tomorrow at noon, and all the present tense sentences. This gets us a lot closer. The sets for the phrases we want to say are synonymous are now perfectly correlated, but the sets for the other paired phrases are not, those relating to Alice's dog, I mean. So we've got a way to line up the sets we want to call synonymous. But we still have a problem. In the model, its very restricted resources, we as yet have no concept of the details of verb tense, and so no basis for identifying the pairings across the sets whose two elements have different tenses. So, for example, at moment 1, we had Fido was on the rug yesterday at noon. And at moment 2, we had Fido is on the rug. The solution to this problem begins with the observation that for every true sentence not in the present tense, there's a corresponding true dated sentence in the so-called historical present tense. This is the mode of speech in which we recount past events in the present tense, either with an explicit or implicit reference to the time at which the events happened. So, for example, it's a dark and stormy New Year's Eve in 1993. Suddenly a shot rings out. The maid screams, and so on. This is merely an artful way of stating what we could otherwise state in past tense English. Noticing this, the model can be augmented not with tense sentences, but rather simply with the convention of indexing sentences with a time to indicate when what they state was or will be true. And there's no problem with restricting membership to historical present sentences in the moment sets of sentences used to evaluate semantics. We could decide whatever we liked should go into those sets. So all of this now gives us the following sentences at moments 1 and 2. As we can see, these sentences are now time indexed, but they're all in the present tense. And the important point is that at the two moments, the sentences are identical. As we can see, the sentences in the two sets now exactly line up. In my experience, some people are preoccupied by the fact that the truth of many sentences, especially sentences such as those about whether a dog will be barking tomorrow at noon, often will be unknown. I don't think that this really matters for the present point. Uncertainty about some sentences means that there may be uncertainty about the synonymy of two token utterances. I think this in practice would be rare. What matters for present purposes, again, is what exactly the determinant of synonymy is. And again, I'm claiming that it's just the truth of these sentences at different points. Happily then, we find that we do have a mechanism which will provide what we're after, which is a purely formal determination of sameness of meaning for two token phrases, regardless of moment of utterance. By comparing these sets of Fido-containing sentences, true at different times, we can tell whether they refer to the same dog or not. And the same point applies to tokens of Fido-containing sentences and Bob's dog-containing sentences. The punchline to all of this is that this is all there is to meaning. We don't need anything else. If we really feel the need to be able to talk in general terms about the meaning of a token phrase, we can just say it's the set of token phrases to which the phrase belongs, all of which have the same meaning at a given moment. And it should be noted that this criterion works for all parts of speech, terms which intuitively refer to individual things like dogs and people and tables, to be sure, but also to words which refer to properties of things such as being furry, being blue, or even being divisible by 17, whatever you like. So this all admittedly is a bit stilted. The point of it, in case sight of the forest has been lost, but with all the trees in the way, is meant to be that this really is how we decide sameness of meaning in ordinary talk. Normally such precision isn't needed. Sameness or difference of the sets of true Fido-involving sentences as it might be on different occasions in normal speech is clear enough. The present definition is really just to show that it's possible. The information exists, if needed, to be arbitrarily fastidious about membership in the set of token phrases which have the same meaning as any given token. Our everyday concept of sameness of meaning isn't of something more precise or otherwise different than what this definition provides. That's what I'm saying. Thank you for your time.